Keep watching. The politics.
Parole TV, the voice for humanity.
Hello, welcome to the Foreign Policy Review. I am Dustin Pickering here, your host, with co-host Carlo Parcelli. And perhaps you're curious about the world and you would like to learn more about how America's interactions with the world affect the policy and situations there. So you're watching us for a good reason. And today we will discuss a little bit about the culture war with COVID and so forth, as well as the elections that just happened in Nicaragua and the American media and its presentation as such. We're going to investigate a little bit of this. So without further ado, Carlo, tell us what you have to say on these issues.
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that when we do these shows, I fly, and I want to correct one error I made last week, and that was that Luis Almagro, the head of the OAS and the U.S. puppet at the OAS, is not Venezuelan, he's Uruguayan. And I wanted to point that out because you might understand this, obviously, that every day I'm being criticized or attacked for things I say online or in person or elsewhere, that sort of thing, because with the U.S. public, in particular, they're quite controversial. So, I mean, many of the things people will point out are kind of idiotics. For example, I was talking about sanctions against Cuba, and this individual got a figure that I think it was 117 million or 137. There was 117 million or 137 million dollars in trade between Cuba and the United States annually. And the number one trade item was chicken, poultry, and the number two trade item was handicrafts. And I had to point out to him that if he did simple math, the 173 million or 137 million, or whatever it was $12 per person in Cuba per annum, and that was like probably not a lot. And the other thing was, if your number two cash export is handicrafts, you're not going to build much of an economy on handicrafts. So, I get questions like that all the time. I mean, or critiques like that all the time, and they're stupid. But one of the things that's really bothering me now is when someone who I had some admiration for example, Jimmy Dore, and his show, which was, touting universal health care and was on the right side of what limited understanding he had of U.S. foreign policy, I admired for a while. But now he's taken this point of view on COVID, which I find not only I don't not agree with it, but I think it's damaging. I think it really might be costing lives, because he has an enormous following. He has almost 1 million subscribers. And one of the things I've noticed about the people who follow him is that it's flipped from people who would normally be for vaccinating or for getting vaccinated to kind of anti-vaxxers. Yet he, in his critiques, he says he's actually not doing this. So it's gotten to the point now where I just basically ridicule the guy. And I came up with this little thing about anti-vaxxing. I said, no, not you, Jimmy. You're not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but your listeners are hearing anti-vax message from you. They can't split hairs like you can. Vaxxed people are not dying. Unvaxxed are. So I propose you join my Vax the Ninnies campaign. So they'll be around to block unions and shoot people of color. Save the ninnies. Save the ninnies. So it's like the fundamental conflicts that arise from his stance are that now he has all of these racist right-wingers going, what a marvelous protector of the U.S., our U.S. constitutional rights to be ninnies that you become. We love you for that. Yet at the same time, he would not, he says he's pro-union. In fact, on this very show, he had Richard Wolff on, the Marxist economist, who is constantly talking about unions. And Dorr, he's done shows about how happy he is to see all of these strikes. Well, you don't have a fucking strike without a union, Jimmy. You fucking idiot. Now you've got half of your million subscribers are anti-union, you dumbass. And why are they? Because they're ninnies. They're not anti-vax for any logical reason. They're just blowing it out their ass. That's as close to rebellion as those nitwits ever got. And so I just wanted to make a statement about that. I have more down here in detail, but I think I'm going to leave it at that, because it's almost I think it's come down to personal pique with him, with people who disagree with him. Not me, because I have no power, but with people who also have online sites or access to the mainstream media, which also garnish a huge amount of viewers and have a huge amount of influence. So I think he's like lost his edge, has lost his integrity in trying to like maintain his position, which from the jump was untenable. And anybody who really has thought these things through for many more years than he has, like myself, would have seen the error of his ways early on. In fact, I tried to point it out to him early on, though I doubt he reads what I send him. He says he doesn't read the comments. I would imagine that somebody with 1 million subscribers, and that I think he collects $368,000 a year or something from his show, would have enough revenue to hire somebody to look at things. But I don't think I had any influence on him.
Right.
But Nicaragua's
Jump into that.
That's really important. We just had an election in Nicaragua, and Daniel Ortega, unsurprisingly, won again with 72% of the vote. The nitwit American media, full of sycophants and idiots and fools and money grubbers and sellouts and other marvelous people. I mean, Dante's covered them all in hell. So, the kind of secular simoniacs. And they all said, well, that guy's a dictator. He's a dictator. No, of course he won, because all the opposition people, they were locked up. Well, the fact of the matter is that the Sandinista government did, in truth, indict about 36 people. What did they indict them for? They indicted them for, in 2018, with U.S. money, U.S. backing, U.S. formulation, they launched a coup against the Sandinista government in 2018. Hundreds of people died. Different estimates from 250 to 450, but people died. And most of the people that died were on the side of the Sandinista government. And in fact, the same hired thugs that launched the several coups in Venezuela were just bust. They were bust. They were put on boats. They were put on boats and shipped to Nicaragua to take part in these coups. So they took over these neighborhoods. They took one local mayor out. They stripped her. They poured chicken blood on her. They marched her through the streets. They set another pro-Sandinista demonstrator on fire. They tried to take over police stations. They took concertina wire and stretched it across the road so people on scooters and motorcycles would get knocked off the motorcycles and sometimes cut by this concertina wire. They ultimately murdered 300 to 400 people. And so, oh my God, what the terrible Sandinista government in Ortega, they took their judicial system and went after these people, and the ones they could catch, they caught, and they gave them a day in court, and they put them in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Americans are big idiots. Nicaragua uses the Napoleonic Code. You're guilty until proven innocent. So it's a different code. It's used all over South America. So that's a different code of law. So they're perfectly within their laws to do what they did to the guys that murdered their people. Now, what the fuck would we do here? Jesus Christ. If we had hired mobs, these are hired by USAID, NED, CIA, hired thugs roaming around Latin America, and then we brought them here, well, we probably have already, to kill people here. Well, we don't know about it or wouldn't accept knowing about it because Americans are stupid. Then we would probably want to do something about it. In a just world. Well, that probably escapes the American mind, the just world sort of concept. But that's the thing. The other thing is the fucking mainstream media kept going on. Well, of course, these people couldn't win the election because they were in jail. How many of them were in jail who were going to run in the election, who were even remotely capable of becoming candidates for president? Zero. None of them. They're money launderers. They're drug traffickers. They're white slave marketers. They're coup leaders. They're arms sellers. They're thugs. They're fucking thugs. They're the people that the United States loves. That the fucking CIA, NED, DIAONI, take your fucking pick. They just love these animals. And it doesn't matter what nationality they are. I understand some of them are white South Africans. That's how far afield they go for these motherfuckers. Dominicans. Anybody who will take and work for $1 for the United States so that the United States can steal other people's goods. So Ortega, the dictator, under coup conditions, under post-coup conditions, won the election with 72% of the vote. This time because he provided stability. That's what he provided, stability. Well, that's what the U.S. says it always wants from these countries is stability. But let's look at Ortega's record since he came back into power, since he was reelected. Since he was reelected president after that disastrous Chamorro bullshit, when he was reelected president in 2006. This is what's happened in Nicaragua. Nicaragua is the second highest economic growth, has the second highest economic growth rates and most stable economy in Central America. Yeah, easily proven. It's the only country in the region producing 90% of the food it consumes. And why is that? It's because the United States has embargoed foods moving from not only their country, but any other country they can control through the banking system that tries to provide Nicaragua with food. So Nicaragua is turned and organized and now produces 90% of its own food. So people aren't starving. What other country did that? What other country did that so magnificently? It put the State Department here back on its heels. That was Russia. Same kind of sanctions meant to starve Russians. Starve Russians. What did the Russians turn around and do? They went from some number in the world with who were producing food exports to number one. Number one, they now produce so much food, they're exporting more food to the world than the United States, which had been number one for decades. U.S. You people are just a fucking bunch of idiots. Okay, then Daniel Ortega, that terrible dictator, also he halved poverty, and also had extreme poverty, uh, and it had the greatest reduction of poverty in Latin America. Uh, he was he reached the UN Millennium Development Goal of cutting malnutrition by half. Oh my God! I mean, the U.S. is in business of starving children. Isn't that one of its main enterprises? Let's starve children. We're starving children in Venezuela. We're starving children in Cuba. We're starving children in the Middle East. We're starving children in Africa. Let's starve children, because when you starve children, then you'll force their parents to go, we've got to make Uncle Slimy stop starving our children. How do we do that? Oh, we have to bring in the IMF and the World Bank and negotiate all of our assets away to these international corporations so that we won't have to starve. And then they do that, and they fucking starve anyway. In fact, it gets fucking worse. Okay, this fucking dictator Ortega. Oh, what a terrible guy! Oh my God, he cut malnutrition by half. He also provided free basic health care and education, which they had provided before. They had provided before. The Sandinistas had provided it before. And then the Contras came along and they burned down the clinics. They burned down the schoolhouses. They raped and killed the school teachers. They did everything they could. They mined the harbor. The U.S. mined the harbor directly. Everything they could possibly do to make sure that the Sandinistas failed, that their agenda failed. The Contras were probably the third great instance of U.S. meddling. Like talk about Russian meddling. All of this shit it's just dwarfs what they're talking about. What CNBC and CNN and those dickheads talk about constantly. Stupid people that have no business lying like that, because it's costing lives. It's ripping children apart every day. It's causing their bellies to swell. It's murder. They're murderers. The first one that's worth noting was the filibuster in 1856 of William Walker. There was a civil war in Nicaragua in 1856 between the Democratic Party and another, I can't remember the name of the other party offhand. So the Democratic Party, which was losing, called this guy William Walker in because he offered to do a filibuster, which literally not the filibuster you have now with these assholes in Congress reading some dick comic book for 24 hours. But a filibuster was somebody who had a little private army and went in and took over the country. And that's exactly what William Walker did. He went in, said he was on the side of this Democratic Party, and then took over the country. And then, to curry favor with the United States, and especially the southern states, he reinstituted slavery that Nicaragua had banned in 1821. He reinstituted slavery so that he would have some leverage. Then, of course, he ran afoul of Cornelius Vanderbilt, who was far more powerful than he was, by trying to co-opt his steam line across the isthmus of the isthmus in Nicaragua. And Vanderbilt, he hired his own Costa Rican thugs and threw William Walker out of the fucking country. The other big event, the United States, you want to talk about meddling, they sent Marines into Nicaragua 14 times in the early 20th century. 14 times. This is where the Sandinistas get their name. Augusto Sandino. Of course, the United States hired the Somozas. Oh, the dictator. You want real dictators? We can talk about the Somozas who went and killed Sandino on behalf of the United States, on behalf of United Fruit, United Brands, just like Guatemala. So when they drove our Benz out, first they drove one, Arguello, I can't remember his name, went out of my head. But then they drove Jacobo Arbenz out, and then you got decades of dictators. Nearly 500,000 peasants lost their lives. So we can have bananas on our fucking goddamn breakfast table, and it was all at the U.S. behest. All the corporations that control U.S. policy, both domestic and foreign. Let's go back to the list. I mean, this is a terrible list. It's awful. Daniel Ortega, what he did, he was such a dictator. Oh, yeah, let's talk about why there might be some screws. And this is where I disagree with Noam Chomsky. Look, when you've got Uncle Slimy standing on your neck, you're going to have to do some pretty serious organizing to prevent losing your place and, in the process, being murdered. Just ask Allende. Oh, we can't ask Allende. He's dead. Ask Trujillo. Oh, we can't ask Trujillo. He's dead. We can't ask ZM. Oh, he's dead. And the last two were allies of the United States. Jesus fucking Christ. They're dead. You know, you cross Uncle Slimy, you're fucking dead. So let's see.
Well, we're going to take a brief break, and we'll come right back with some further comments from Carlo concerning Nicaragua. Enjoy the break. You're watching American. Welcome back to Foreign Policy Review for that brief break. I hope you enjoyed it. We're discussing Nicaragua, the elections that just occurred in Ortega. So, Carlo, what else do you have to say on this issue?
Well, I have the next thing. I really like this next one. Ortega's dictatorship. He eliminated the illiteracy, essentially eliminated illiteracy in Nicaragua. So, and as you and I know, because we've read our Antonio Gramsci, that's one of the most dangerous things you can do if you're afraid of your people rising up against you. Because if you're fucking with your people and they know how to read, they will turn on you if you're screwing them. So that's an enormous risk, and he did it. The illiteracy rate was essentially eliminated in Nicaragua. Now, in the United States, we have a higher illiteracy rate now here than Cuba or Nicaragua or a lot of other poor countries. But that's because there's a lot of people in this country who pride themselves on their ignorance, like don't get a COVID-19 shot because I'm doing my research in between shooting hoops, for the NBA. Jesus fucking Christ. The illiteracy, Gramsci makes a good point here, and apparently this dictator felt so dictatorial, this Ortega, what a nasty guy, that he actually taught everybody to read and said, okay, come at me, man. So I think there's something suspect about the way the U.S. media is reporting this. Then he went and there was an average economic growth of 5.2% for the past 5 years. And this is according to the IMF and the World Bank. And there's an interesting side story to this. People think that Reagan started the conscience. Well, he did not. Jimmy Carter started the Contras. That great, well, in his own fashion, that great neoliberal Jimmy Carter. When the Sandinistas took over, they had this huge debt, and I mean, left over by the Somozas, 4 decades of dictatorship. So they were attempting to pay part of it back, but they really were cash poor. They didn't have much money, but the World Bank gave them a loan anyway. I can't remember what the amount was. It wasn't a lot, but with that loan, they made great progress in healthcare, education, literacy, food production, blah blah blah. Well, everything we're talking about here, first time around, because they're dedicated to helping their own fucking people. Not you fat pigs on Wall Street, you fucking animals. I mean, on the one hand, Americans will go, "Oh, Wall Street, oh, this does that." You know, this guy's got 200 billion, this guy's got 150 billion, and they're just crying in their beer. You know, well, people actually suffer from that. People actually suffer deprivation from that. You haven't reached that point yet, but they're going to get you there. They're going to get you. In fact, you all already are there, but you're like the frog in the water, slowly boiling. And you won't catch on in time. You're too stupid. But anyway, the World Bank came out with a report that the Nicaraguans were making amazing progress. As and many of these other socialists, I mean, Venezuela, same kind of report. Cuba, same kind of report. That's an alert for the U.S. to go in and destroy you because you're making progress for your own people. So what did Jimmy Carter do? He sicked the State Department on them, and they started to come up with plans for undermining the Nicaraguan revolution, the Sandinista revolution, because it was making progress, because it was helping its own people. And Jimmy Carter, what a piece of... Give me a break. Okay. It's also this terrible Ortega. You law and order people out there, you'll love this. He made it the safest country in Central America with one of the lowest crime rates in all of Latin America. And Nicaragua is right next to El Salvador, where U.S. death squads are killing bishops and nuns and priests and peasants. And El Salvador is just south of Guatemala, where 500,000 people are killed by U.S. proxy fascists. Highest level of gender equality in the Americas. How about that, Afghanistan fans? Highest level of gender equality in all of the Americas. That includes the United States. And this is by the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report of 2017. Oh, my God. Oh, all you feminists, you better get out there and support Nicaragua, you motherfuckers. I guess you don't fuck your mothers. Okay. He did not contribute to the migrant exodus to the U.S., unlike neighboring Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. Well, I'll be damned. No, that's right. The Nicaraguans are not coming up here because they've got enough on their own and they know life is better in Nicaragua, even with Uncle Slimy's boot on its neck. Take Honduras. Honduras in 2009. The Hondurans had the balls to elect Zelaya, who was a kind of liberal, left, centrist kind of guy, but he said the two words that will get you killed in Latin America, if not exile: land reform. He was out. Coup, American coup. Your great neoliberal saviors, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and that fucker who I hope never reaches any position of high power ever again, Joe Biden, staged the coup in Honduras. Now it's a great drug-running conduit for the Central Intelligence Agency, and their black budget is flush. They've murdered hundreds of reporters and human rights people, genuine human rights people, not these NGO human rights people, and people who are interested in maintaining the environment. That's and school teachers. School teachers are murdered and mayors are murdered. Now under this new fuck, this right wing, they've gotten power. I can't remember his name. This puppet. So, and one more. Unlike its neighbors, it kept out the drug cartels and pioneered community policing. Well, that's kept out the drug cartels. There's so many places that the CIA and its buddies in Colombia can run their drugs out of South America and use these staging points in Central America. I mean, you've got Belize; it's just riddled with small airfields. You've got Honduras, which is doing nothing about it. Guatemala never did much about it. Mexico, it's too big. There's just no way you can control it. So the United States and its consumers are just, they're flush with drugs. You got all the drugs you want. I suggest the American people take more drugs because you're already, beyond your delusions are all so ridiculous that you might as well just fry your brains right out. Because this is what I wanted to make the point I wanted to open the show with, is that sometimes I'm kibitzing about Nicaragua, for example, which I did last week, with assholes on the Washington Post. Now, you would expect the Washington Post to be full of neoliberal people, but who would be somewhat sophisticated about what was going on in Nicaragua, whether or not they just accept the Post line. They got this guy on the Washington Post who's basically anti-Venezuelan, Fat Tony Fayola, and Tony Fayola writes lie after lie after lie about these dictatorial powers all over Central America, people who are trying to serve their own people, not serve U.S. interests, and these people just accept them at face value. At face value, here you've got. I'm assuming they can read if they can type out a sentence that's more or less grammatically correct, but they don't seem to make an effort to see if what Fat Tony is saying is true, and it's not. It's not true. The situation with the United States and say Nicaragua, for example, is this. Let's say you have a house and you are changing your baby's diaper. And the baby, and while you're changing the baby's diaper, one of your neighbors, let's say your neighbor to the north of you, sets your house on fire. So you start putting out the fire. You leave the baby in his diaper, and you start putting out the fire. And then you call in all of your family and your neighbors to help you put out the fire. So that, and you've taken the precautions to, if this situation occurs, because you know what fucking bastards your neighbors to the north are, that they form a brigade and they put out the fire. Then you turn to your child and you change his diaper, but you waited. Now he has a diaper rash, and your neighbor to the north goes to social services and said, "We have to take that baby away. We were trying to burn down their house, and they didn't change the baby's diaper, and now the baby has diaper rash. So obviously the baby's been neglected." And then what happens? If you prevail with social services and they let you keep your baby, then they come down and burn your whole house and kill your baby and kill your whole family and just destroy everything around you and kill everything in your country, and just, like Ben Sook, they just bulldoze it all down and then take salt and put it on there so nothing will ever grow again. It's called the Libya complex or something. I mean, I could give it a lot of names, but let's just stay with Libya here. But anyway, That's my little take on the recent elections in Nicaragua. I think, even this is from a left wing. It says Nicaragua's failed coup. It wasn't Nicaragua's failed coup. It was the U.S.'s failed coup. There wasn't a failed coup in Nicaragua. But if you needed proof on how much they leaned on U.S. support for this attempted coup, you can read some of these things and get some interesting insights if you understand hypocrisy. Like this paragraph begins: in open democracy, the international protest group SOS Nicaragua calls Ortega a tyrant hell-bent on the bloody repression of the nation. I just read you a list. I mean, when's the last time you can get paper cuts for reading books, but that's about all. This is such hysterical bullshit. It was like one of the things that got people into the streets initially was that it was reported that 2 students at Managua University had been shot and killed by the security police. Turned out to be a lie. It turned out to be a lie from Langley, and Langley's nowhere near Nicaragua. Langley's just it's like 30 minutes down the road from me, Washington D.C. That's where those fuckers are. His local detractors disagree. His local detractors agree. For example, on July 10th, Vilma Nunez, a long-standing opponent of Ortega's, was originally his ally, and she told the BBC that he was rolling out an extermination plan for Nicaragua. He's going to kill his own people. I think she's on to something. He was going to overfeed them. He was producing too much food so they'd get fat like Americans. Obesity would go through the roof, and they would die of hyperglycemia. If anybody, and when I go on the chat list, I get people citing this shit, literally citing this shit. It's just amazing. When rebels briefly held one of Nicaragua's cities a few weeks ago, rebels, that's a kind word. Those are the trunks, the trunques. Those are the fucking mercenaries that the NED and the USAID, which are simply CIA fronts, those are the kind of people they hire. They took over this neighborhood. Said they had ended 11 years of repression. SOS Nicaragua even claims that Ortega is, quote, more hated. This is brilliant. This is absolutely let me just back up. Okay, it said Ortega is more hated and more long-lived tyrant than Nicaragua's former dictator, Anastasio Somoza, and his family, who ruled Nicaragua ruthlessly for more than 40 years. And they complain about the Sandinistas winning elections. The Somozas held it for 40 years. Now, the whole notion that Ortega and the Sandinistas are more violent than the Somozas is so ludicrous. But you can go on the New York Times chat list. You can go on the Los Angeles Times chat list. I don't know if these people are bots or plants. You can go on the Washington Post chat list, the Chicago Tribune, any fucking newspaper in this country, and you get idiots citing that sort of thing because they've never bothered to read about the Somozas. They never bothered to spend one fucking second with all this information available, all these books, all these papers at their fingertips now, their goddamn fingertips, who know nothing about the Somozas. Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. And so they're blowing out their ass, and me, idiot that I am, who takes this stuff very seriously, I take the time to try to straighten their asses out. And if they want to come back at me, they haven't done shit. Fuck them. You know, if you want to murder little babies, believe what you read in the New York Times. If you want to slaughter little infants, believe what you read in the Washington Post by Fat Tony Fayola. You know, but the bottom line is you're complicit in murder. Nothing else. You're complicit in murder. You're slaughtering infants. That's what you're doing. You're killing little ones. You're killing babies. You're a baby killer. Laying the groundwork for insurrection. This is proof that it's U.S. meddling. I mean, not that you needed it. There was a brilliant article by Ben Norton. He has, what did he use? He used WikiLeaks. Use WikiLeaks because he had State Department memos between anti-Ortega forces and the U.S. State Department where they're setting it up. They're setting up this coup attempt in 2018. That's called, you want to talk about Russian meddling? Fuck! This is serious meddling. This is taking mercenaries, people, and supplying them with arms and weapons and finance and drugs. Supplying them with heroin, with hallucinogens. These mercenaries that murdered Nicaraguans. I mean, what more do you need? Oh, my God. And step up or shut up. Laying the groundwork. How were the conditions for a coup created? The aims of U.S. government funding in Nicaragua and the tactics they paid for in this paid for. Your taxpayer money. Your taxpayer money. Killing babies. Killing little babies. Murder. Were made surprisingly clear in the online magazine Global Americans in 2018, which is partly funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. Who the fuck else? NED, arguing in May 2018 at the height of the violence that, quote, Nicaragua is on the brink of a civic insurrection. The author Ben Waddell, who was in Nicaragua at the time, pointed out, and that, quote, U.S. support has helped play a role in nurturing the current uprisings. Well, he admits it. He admits that they're of course, anybody with half a brain would know that. It comes down to that thing. Like, why does it have to be even said? I mean, you got, anybody who's taken the time to read any of Bill Blum's books, God rest his soul, knows how many have been murdered. And they're adding to it. They're adding to that list of coups and coup d'etats and overthrowing governments and destroying entire countries. They're adding to that list every fucking day. Every fucking day, Uncle Slimy is adding to that list on behalf of Wall Street. Not on your behalf. They won't even give you fucking health care, you stupid people. They won't even give you a decent minimum wage, you fucking idiots. Other people in the world know this about you. And the ones that aren't laughing are scratching their heads real hard like, how dumb can you be? How dumb can you be? Got anything for me? You got any comments?
Well, let's see if any of our viewers will have anything to say. And feel free to open up some discussion, some questions if you're out there viewing right now. I don't have any questions. I listened intently and brought some good points of discussion into the fold there, and concerning some of the negative aspects of the presentation we present to the world, and some of the ideas that are sort of cohesive to the especially the media empire, I guess you could call it. We don't really get a full picture of what's going on, and it's very ironic that especially regarding the mainstream media, that they're so focused on things like this Rittenhouse trial and that's a big topic of discussion right now, and the education system, the critical race theory, so forth. And there's no real in-depth discussion about the effects here of how what's going on in the rest of the world. I mean, you just don't hear as much about that kind of stuff. How our actions and how they're interrelated to our economy and economic system, how that affects the rest of the world at large. So, I hope people are watching this presentation here from the media here, concerning Nicaragua, and just getting an idea of some of the, counterpoints to the presentation in terms of, how the media is what they're telling us about things and what's being discussed. I mean, there's a pretty wide variety of, you could say, knowledge, as Carlos said. There's a lot of, knowledge available, information available online through, other media sources, and all kinds of things going on in the world that, we could easily, look at as Americans. Both of us are Americans, as Americans, and in general, and think about, what are other countries doing for them, for their own people, and how those kinds of programs could be adapted and pushed in our own country. Like, you talked about community policing, for instance, and, some of the, I was having a conversation about restorative justice yesterday, actually, things like that. We could definitely address ways of reforming our system, to benefit at large from, examples taken from other countries and what they're pursuing and how they're, what they're working towards. What do you think, Carlo? Do you think that's sort of a, kind of a, positive assessment?
Yeah, in fact, you kind of read my mind, because I wanted to open up with a brief discussion of Rittenhouse and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery too.
Okay.
And in relationship to Jimmy Dore, because he's loaded now with his subscribers with people who are absolutely hoping that the white perpetrators of these crimes, Rittenhouse and the three assholes who murdered Arbery, will get off. I mean, it's sort of like there's the racism that Dore has sort of invited into his and the reactionary quality into his listenership has kind of I don't know, I think put his whole enterprise in jeopardy, because the inconsistency of it is I think ultimately going to do him in. But I actually ended up watching mistakenly. I wasn't going to turn on CNN, but they had the Rittenhouse thing on, and frankly, all I wish for that kid is that he spends the rest of his life in prison, and suffers every day of his life. This, that little, he kind of embodies the U.S. mind, that strutting around. I've got a gun, I've got this AR-15. I'm going to strut around and pretend I'm a tough guy, sort of thing, and I got nothing going on in my head. I don't know shit from Shinola, and apparently my mother is just as stupid as I am, because she drove me here. And there's no. I know when I was a kid, if I was his age, I could already drive. But when I couldn't drive, if I had to have my father drive, my mother didn't drive, but my father drive me anywhere, it was really embarrassing to me. But this guy, he gets out of his mother's car and he goes strutting around, and you go, what the, what a cripple, what a real cripple. Is he any use to any of us at all? No, he's no use to American society. It's certainly no use to world society. So why not? I mean, why not just throw him in a hole somewhere? other than the fact that it's going to cost $107,000 a year, or whatever it costs per prisoner, 30,000, 100, whatever, so depending on the prison. Um, what's the deal here? Why would you even want to, not to, and then you go to the three fat fucks, the one who was a former, I think he was a former sheriff, or where he, where he lived, who shot, this Ahmed Arbery kid. Why would she? Why do we even have? Why are we even wasting taxpayer money on a trial? There's the video. Have a three judge panel who have common sense, and if they don't, and they let the guys off, make sure they go to prison, and then there's something fundamentally wrong with this notion of free and fair trials, or free and fair elections, when the fact of the matter is that, like we were talking about from the beginning, the epistemology is already dramatically skewed toward a certain canon of injustice. I mean, I'm holding up book after book, that demonstrates that, published by the very country that fucking did it, the inhumanity, and there's no acknowledgement of it among the people, the judicial system. It's we got to give these guys a fair trial, and but in Arbery's case, we only have one black person on the jury, and the judge has denied that any other 24 blacks were rejected, and we can't revisit that. It can't be revisited. And you go, really? Well, why not? Why can't it? Why don't we revisit it by taking the judge out to an alley and beating the shit out of him until he goes, oh, well, maybe we should revisit it. That's where I am with this shit, because I know these trials are not going to be fair. I know that if they don't walk, they're going to get less prison time. They're already talking about the skinny shit that stood by. I mean, in Arbery's case, they're already talking about, well, he wasn't even involved in the beating. So, fuck that. He was there. He didn't try to stop it. He didn't try to stop the shooting. He didn't try to stop the illegal stop. He was there. I mean, we got kids in Baltimore who are serving life because they were standing outside looking on the lookout when a robbery went down and somebody was shot. They're serving life. They were the lookout. This guy, he was the fucking lookout. If he was a citizen, you'd think he would have called the police and said, there's some guys trying to kill this black guy. You got to come right away. Of course, it wouldn't have done any good, because I've seen the cops in the videos down there. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit if a black guy's killed. They just don't give a shit. So where does the justice start? It doesn't start anywhere. It's it's the same thing with U.S. foreign policy. It's just there's just too many animals out there. Too many just subhuman individuals and psychopaths from top to bottom. You get this skinny little, 105-pound Gina Haspel who just loves torturing people. She's kind of like Torquemada. She was Torquemada. She just took great pleasure in torturing people. I think somebody should write a book about Marquis de Sade and Gina Haspel. A study, a psychological study, and a bunch of other people. The guy in Uruguay, Dan Mitrione, who tortured people in Uruguay for the CIA, and Ed Lansdale, who made up all these lies and got millions of people killed in Vietnam, and in Central America, and was also involved loosely through Theodore Shackley in the Iran Contra affair and that sort of thing. You got these people they're psychologically ill. Maybe we have to turn toward a psychology of justice and say, we've taken a look at your record, and we know you're for baby killing, and we just think baby killing is wrong, so we have to remove you from public life. And that would be it would be a watershed. You'd have to take out virtually everybody in public life. You'd have to remove them. So when it comes to that, you have to begin to question how wrong has it gone, and why has it gone so wrong? Well, it was always wrong. It was wrong from the jump. I mean, it was wrong with the founding fathers, who were really more interested in their estates than they were in freedom. They were interested in maintaining their economic power. It's really, this is like the worst. The U.S. is the worst thing that could have happened to the world. Absolute worst. I mean, if you want to read about the true nature of the Enlightenment, read Adorno and Horkheimer. Read those Marxist motherfuckers. They nailed it. This is just what's going on in the U.S. now is just insane. There aren't even words to describe it. I mean, on the one hand, they're talking about truth and justice and taking this, removing these dictators, when they're doing the exact thing in the previous breath they said should be dealt with maximum violence. So why don't I, as an individual, go, well, if what you're saying is true, Blinken, if what you're saying is true, Pompeo, why don't I have the right to remove you with extreme violence? Because you are doing the very kind of violence that you say you don't sanction. So perhaps I should take your word and go and make sure you're not able to perform that violence. That's why they're so protected. That's why they have bodyguards. That's why they have immunity.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most insane things I've ever heard is that U.S. forces, they would not agree to certain conditions in other countries if U.S. forces did not have immunity from ICC prosecution. If U.S. officials were not guaranteed immunity from the international court's prosecuting powers, as though they needed it because they fucking own the fucking ICC.
Well, with that note, Carlo, thank you so much. We had an excellent talk. So we're going to go ahead and close the show. Thank you guys out there for watching the Foreign Policy Review. I'm Dustin Pickering. We had Carlo Parcelli as my co-host on this program at Parrot TV. Keep an eye out and subscribe to the channel while you're sitting there right now watching it, YouTube or Facebook. Go to YouTube and subscribe to be updated further on other broadcasts. Thank you all for viewing, and hope to see you again next week, Thursday, 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you again. Have an excellent afternoon.